one famous chili cheese dog.
No, this isn't right. I need more grease on this. I need more oil.
Sir, I cannot do that. It's against regulations. I could lose my license.
I need this oily. I need this to lubricate the world. I need this dog to have some grease on it. So when I eat it, the grease will lubricate my throat.
Sir, I cannot do that. It's not safe to use too much oil. I repeat, I could lose my license.
You probably think I'm the greasy strangler. That's why you won't grease my dog.
Back to Nickel for three. Got it! Wow. Tied at 81.
Welcome back into the Door Report, and welcome back into episode 305 on a lovely Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. I am Will Byrum, joined as always by my co-host, Trevor Hulan, a.k.a. Hack Squat, Jim Duggan. Here at the Door Report, we are presented by 615 Collectibles. If you're into sports cards or sports memorabilia, check out 615 Collectibles on eBay. Items include individual team cards, graded cards, team packs, and more. Check them out on eBay by typing in 615 Collectibles in the eBay search bar, or you can go to ebay.com/str/615 Collectibles. Trevor, I said a lovely March 4th. It was lovely today.
Yeah, it's actually about to be unlovely.
Yes, that's what I wanted to add there. Kind of messed that up. It is about to be unlovely. A storm is brewing.
Yeah.
I went to streetcar down the road from our townhouse. You probably shouldn't release that, but oh well. People want to know.
We live on.
Yeah, people want to know. We live
Our
in,
address
I
is.
tell you, we live in West Nashville somewhere. So there
We
we
live
go.
off Charlotte.
But as I was sitting there in like their little back patio area, they had the little plastic sheets up to keep in heat. Boy, those sounded like they wanted to blow off.
Yeah.
That storm was a brewing. So buckle up, everybody. Had some nice weather while I was gone.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about that.
Have to tell everybody out there. So I've been a little bit less active on social media and on the boards. I've still tried to get the social media posts up on Instagram and some graphics up on Twitter. But Trevor has been in charge of getting articles posted, doing all that. Gone spectacularly.
Tried to do 3 spaces, though. They all
Yeah.
they all crapped out. So I'm on a big screw Elon Musk right now. We've never had issues with spaces. 3 all crapped out.
Yeah, I was about to say everything was great except that I did get quite a few mentions about like you leave for a week and your boy can't run a mention or run a space.
My guys, come on. Cut me some slack here.
But I was in Seattle all week last week. Attempted snowboarding, made it through a day and a half before calling it quits. That was the end of my snowboarding career. Not good at it. The falling part does not hurt near as much as I thought it would. The day of.
Yeah.
So I fell at least 200 times day one, went down the bunny slope a few times and did a couple real runs. Fell a lot. The next day when I woke up and I went on my first run, falling after the soreness had set in from the previous day, I went on a couple runs and went, I'm done, guys.
Yeah.
I'm a grown up. I can't do this. I'm going to go drink at the lodge.
Yeah.
So that was my snowboarding experience, but got to watch some SEC basketball on Saturday. But because of my traveling, didn't really get to watch baseball, didn't get to watch the Tuesday victory over Texas A&M, or was that Wednesday? Wednesday victory over Texas
The
A&M.
days are all
Yeah,
blurring
they're all-
together.
I thought today was Monday.
I
all
thought
day.
today was Wednesday.
The reason I'm thrown off is I was supposed to take a flight from Seattle at around 5 p.m. Seattle time yesterday. That flight got delayed until midnight Seattle time. So I did not get into my room until about 7 a.m. this morning. Is when I arrived. I took a brief nap. I went and saw my girl at streetcar. Nice little date, very tired, made no sense. Then came back here, prepped for the podcast, and here we are.
Yeah.
So if
Took a nap.
Yeah, took a nice little 30-minute nap, which I think was a huge mistake. Woke up tremendously more tired and scrambled than I was. So if I sound a little weird, I have been on the other side of the country and was in a plane less than like 14 hours ago.
Yeah.
So here we are. Shout out to Steve Byrum, my dad, for picking me up at 5:15 a.m.
Oh,
this
shout out
morning.
Mr. Steve.
Yes. Thank you so much. I've texted him thank you multiple times, but I think I should also thank publicly. All right, now back to Vanderbilt sports, which is what me and my father talked about when he picked me up at 5:15 a.m. because it never ends.
Never ends.
Not worried about the trip. We're worried about what Vanderbilt's doing.
I don't care about how snowboarding went. We need to talk about Vandy hoops now.
I don't care about your best friend from childhood that I also consider partially my own son. I don't care about it.
I don't care about
some Vandy.
We'll talk about him later.
Yeah. All right. But Vanderbilt. Wow. I believe in this app. Yeah. Turned a corner is I don't even think a strong enough statement, but we will hit on that with 2 more wins over top 15 opponents, locking Vanderbilt into the NCAA tournament. Locking.
Did you think you'd be saying those words before the season started?
No, I didn't.
No, I didn't either. We
will talk about this in detail once we get into segment 1, but truly where I talked about and I ranted about ceilings and floors last episode, this is above where my ceiling was. This has exceeded what I thought.
Before we get there,
unless they lose the last 2 and then it's at my ceiling.
I do want to say though before, I went back and I listened to some old TDR episodes today at work to remember what we said about preseason, what our expectations were for basketball. And in the moment, you weren't I don't think anybody would have disagreed with you. And this is not to shame you, but this is just to say how crazy of a season it's been. In your season preview, you said, I have a sub-0 expectation that Vanderbilt makes the tournament.
Yeah, okay. I can see that.
And I immediately replied with, no, I agree.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I really wish, and now, of course, the one freaking season we don't do a full season preview is this season.
So maybe next year we shouldn't do a full season preview.
Yeah, maybe that's the key, is we don't need to do it, but because football was good, we didn't have the time to do the full season preview.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make myself sound good. I didn't see this coming. With the roster construction, new coach, no chemistry.
The depth of SEC conference basketball.
That was what we kept. Even before non-con and during non-con, we just kept being the depth of this conference.
We're guys, and we said this before. We're this might be the best basketball conference we've ever seen. It is. We're at the end of the season. We can say, in our lifetime, in our 27 years, this is the greatest top to bottom college basketball conference we have ever seen.
That truly, even the bottom tier team, South Carolina, is good enough to put belt to ass to Kentucky.
They would be second in the ACC right now.
That's the part that, some of these teams are struggling. There's some teams that aren't tournament teams. I don't think South Carolina is necessarily a tournament team, even outside of the SEC. But we that's beyond the pale of what I'm trying to get at here. But the fact that your worst team, without a doubt, definitively, can go in and just have a game where they beat the hell out of a projected 4 seed in Kentucky on the road. So there's a lot of depth. But man, I leave for 1 week and the boys go crazy. I really wanted to be at the whiteout against Missouri on Saturday. But Vanderbilt has a couple matchups upcoming before the SEC tournament. We will touch on those briefly as well in Arkansas and Georgia. And then after the TDR cocktail break, we will briefly discuss some disappointing baseball results. And I will swing it to Trevor quite a bit because I keep mentioning it. I was up in the mountains. I didn't have access to Big Ten Plus.
Yeah.
And I didn't have quite good enough internet service to be going through an illegal streaming site and dealing with all the pop-ups. So I didn't get to watch any baseball this weekend. Yeah. So I'm completely out of the loop. So Trevor's going to have to fill me in there. But before we get into all that and much more, we are now a part of the Rivals Publisher Network. Visit vanderbilt.rivals.com today and subscribe to a monthly or annual subscription and support TDR. Please become a premium member because we are about to answer premium board questions. Use code DOORREPORT, all capital letters, no spaces, for a 30-day, no-risk free trial. I repeat, that code is DOORREPORT, all capital letters, no spaces. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Door Report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. It's now time for segment 1.
Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it! Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it! Yeah! Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it! Basketball, gimme.
Welcome back into segment 1 of episode 305 of The Door Report. We are going to start out segment 1 with a brief recap and kind of stat rundown of the 2 basketball games. So Vanderbilt played 2 games, had 2 upcoming on the schedule, both against top 15 opponents. And me and Trevor kind of broadly predicted how we thought Vanderbilt, or we saw Vanderbilt doing in these last 4 games, this last 4-game stretch. You had Texas A&M, you had Missouri, you have Arkansas, and Georgia. 2 at home, 2 on the road. And I predicted last episode, I remember they would go 2-2. I thought they would beat Missouri, and I thought they would beat, I think it was, and I think I said one of the 2 of Georgia or Arkansas, but I know I said Missouri.
Yeah.
But I think you actually
I was the
said,
opposite.
Yeah.
I agreed 2-2, but I said we would drop Missouri, but we would beat Georgia.
That's right. So I was right accidentally.
Yeah.
Didn't really expect them, and neither of us expected them to pull off what they did in College Station against Texas A&M. That was one that I think we literally said, I don't want to write it off as a loss, but with what we've seen on the road, for all intents and purposes, we can write it off as a loss. They didn't lose. Number 12, Texas A&M,
which is crazy.
I just, cut to the chase. Vanderbilt won 86-84 against Texas A&M, and a majority of that game, or I want to say the major contribution, and this carries over into the next game and the next victory, is Tyler Nickel.
Yeah.
Was incredible against Texas A&M. Led the team with 21 points, 7 of 10 from the 3-point line.
70%.
If Tyler Nickel is shooting 70% from the 3-point line, Vanderbilt can win a national championship.
I agree.
So
I agree.
I think the most diehard Vanderbilt hater in the world would agree with that.
Yeah.
So that performance is what won them the game. Jason Edwards, I believe, had 15 points, his normal contribution, nothing special out of him. MJ Collins Jr. as well had an incredible game that I think is kind of being overlooked by what Tyler Nickel did. 16 points for MJ Collins, 4-7 from the field, 7 of 11 from the free throw line.
Also a season high for him.
So a really good game. Chris Magnon, not a huge contributor in the A&M game.
Defensively, he was, but offensively,
6 points, 1 of 5 from the field. I didn't get to watch that one. So defense doesn't show up in the box score.
Yeah.
I didn't get to watch.
He was a goon on defense.
Yeah,
Your traditional Chris Magnon on defense.
Yeah, I was telling you I got to watch 5 to 7 minutes of the second half and didn't even get to see the end. So I was limited accessibility to that game. So Trevor, kind of what was your overall thoughts? What did you take away from the A&M game?
Well, probably good you couldn't watch the end because the end got sticky and the end made me uncomfortable and I thought we were going to lose. I actually left the TDR group chat because Blake Froman kept saying, we're going to win, we're going to win, we're going to win. And I love Blake to death. I really do. But I texted him and I said, Blake, shut the fuck up. Not now. So I left the group chat because he was making me angry. Turns out he was right. Vanderbilt did get the win. And I got added back to the group chat. Thank you, guys. The vibe of that game was just whenever you watch the game, there was no real reason why Vanderbilt should have won. And I'll say it because of this. Texas A&M made the game a physical, muddy bar fight. And that is the prototypical game that Buzz Williams likes to play. And whenever they play that game and they force you into that style, they're going to win. And they did that, but they didn't come out with the win. So I think overall, it just sort of shows the tenacity of this Vanderbilt team that they can play pretty, make good shots. They can also, if you want to get into a bar fight, they're like, all right, we'll square up and we'll get into a bar fight.
See, this is why that picture of us when it said name a duo with unreal chemistry. This is why that picture should have gotten more juice. Because my next question was, what was the pace of play? Because but you already hit on it. Because that's it was a typical game.
It was a typical Buzz Williams Texas A&M basketball game to where a lot of not bad foul calls. There were bad foul calls,
but
like
physicality that
it was physical and it was dirty and it was ugly and it was just. It was like a bar fight, and that's how Texas A&M likes to play basketball.
Because I wanted to have a take on this game that I thought I was correct on based on going back and watching highlights, didn't watch the full thing. But this was a game that why I said Vanderbilt turned a corner, and I don't think that's enough of a compliment, is this is a game they didn't get to play their style that they want to play.
No. They played Texas A&M style.
And they still came out and won. So even without the depth at post, even without the depth everywhere, Byington is able to adjust. And he's clearly, because there was the second half fall apart stretch.
Yeah.
Something has clicked. Something has, I don't want to, put a curse on him, but something has clicked with Byington in second half adjustments.
Yeah.
And the team and the rotations and figuring out when he can have those quote unquote bad lineups on the court. Because I complain about them. But with this roster's makeup, at some point, for a 4 to 5 minute stretch, sometime you're going to have a bad lineup on the court.
Yeah.
You're going to look at and say Tanner, Hogard, Magnon,
Collins,
Carey, and you're like, what is that? And even that one I don't hate as much. It's the Tanner Huffman,
Tanner
Hogard,
Huffman,
Hogard,
Collins.
I don't know. There's combos that I've seen that I've tweeted that I didn't like. So
I think the big one is the Huffman, Tanner, Collins, Magnon.
Yeah, and Carey. Because then even with McLaughlin, you have a little bit of shooting capability out there. There are some lineups he puts out there that all 4 guys basically are not shoot. All 5 guys are not shooters.
Just straight defense.
Just straight defense and drivers.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I know they don't have enough shooters, but like you can't have Edwards and McLaughlin and Carey all off the court. That's like one of those 3, and
or nickel.
Yeah, okay, nickel.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the one I didn't add. But you have to have one of them on the court, and sometimes they'll have all of them off the court, and that's really tough because that's all you're shooting. That's all you got.
I totally agree.
Hogard was the one, and we'll shift games now because I'm sure we have questions about the game. So that was the A&M recap. Nothing in detail. Vanderbilt won, incredible win, turned the corner, first real good road win of the season. You needed that for the resume, and that win boosted Vanderbilt into not quite a lock. You were already in the driver's seat. Now you're like 50 yards from the finish line in an F1 race car, and you're like, you can crash. There's ability to crash out. But man, you'd have
they were in the red zone after that game.
You really have to crash out.
They were in the red zone in that game. After that game.
Yeah. And then Vanderbilt went on and just put the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae and went on to beat Missouri in a whiteout senior night in Memorial. Memorial Magic is back.
Yep.
Overtime victory over Missouri in unbelievably dramatic fashion, 97-93. Down 3 points with less than 7 seconds to go. AJ Hogard drives down the court, gets in the paint, makes the veteran smart move of getting the ball out quick beyond the 3-point line before they have a chance to foul him. Kicks it out to Nickel. Nickel buries the 3. And I think obviously Nickel is the 80% part of that play. He had to come in clutch. He had to hit the 3. I don't want to overlook how much we have shit on him, how much of a huge play that was from AJ Hogard.
How much of a huge game he had.
Game in general, but that play in particular was a play that 99% of point guards do not execute correctly. They either pass it too early, and Nickel has to throw up a very contested 3. They drive in and they take the layup with not enough time, or they drive in and allow themselves to get fouled, or they throw it away out of it. That was a great play by him.
I will ask you.
It looked simple, but it wasn't.
I will ask you, why did they not foul earlier?
I was asking myself the same thing.
In the gym, they're up 7 seconds left. I'm like, okay, they're going to foul. And they didn't. And so I don't know if that was a breakdown. I don't know if that just they were like, all right, let them shoot. But like,
I know people don't like it.
It's a pretty standard basketball cue that if you're up 3 late, you foul.
That was the exact position when you should.
I was confused why. I'm glad they did, but from a basketball analytic, like just how the game's played, you foul there. And I don't know why they didn't.
Brother, I was sitting on my couch when Hogard drove in, and I was like, what are you doing? They're going to foul you now. I was like, once he got inside the 3-point, I'm like, they're just going to grab him.
Yeah.
And it's over. I don't know. That was, I think the foul up 3 is overutilized. Sometimes I think people do it with too much time left.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
That situation was literally what it was created
That was
for.
Textbook.
Yeah, it was you can foul with about 4 seconds left. They're going to be forced to foul you. They're going to, best case, even if you go 1 or 2, have to score. They have to hit both free throws, first off. You have to miss one, and then they still have to score with, like, in the same situation with 2 seconds left.
From half court, and you're probably running a press.
Yeah, that was I don't know, but I'm happy that they made the brain fart of not fouling there. That's a team that won 8 games last year, I guess. I don't know, but they're a whole new roster.
But, hey, that's a really, really good basketball team
it is.
now. That's a really good basketball team.
A very good win. Vanderbilt as a team shot almost 41% from 3, 9 of 22. Shot 49.1% from the field, 28 of 57. And then we have to give credit to our most valuable point guard of the game. Probably the best game I have seen an individual player play all season was Chris Magnon. Chris Magnon had I believe, career high.
Yeah.
23 points, 8 of 13 from the field, 11 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 2 steals.
First double-double as a Commodore.
He was, and those stats don't even do it justice, like, to be honest, because a majority of his contribution was defensively.
Yep.
He started guarding Grill.
He did.
And
he locked him up.
And he locked up Grill. So he did that offensively, rebounded, created steals, played good help defense, and locked down a guy that was tearing up Vanderbilt early, and an elite shooter.
Yeah.
And Caleb Grill. Great. By the way, Caleb Grill is a hell of a player. Every time I watch him, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
His jump shot is
smooth.
If you've ever grown up playing and you've heard the beef videos about shooting form, watch Caleb Grill.
Yep.
It's art. Okay. I have to give credit sometimes to opponents. Caleb Grill's jumper is art.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know about him, and he hit Vanderbilt, he's really good moving off the ball and cutting.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so hard, is if you're a shooter, he's an okay ball handler. He can handle the ball, which makes it even worse. And he can drive and finish.
He was killing us on those screens,
but
the way he was cutting.
His movement off the ball is a former high school shooter. His movement off the ball and what he does, and it does frustrate me how Vanderbilt was playing, but he does such a good job of putting you in bad positions off screens, and that's something my high school coach would rant about. That's a lost art. Going off screens off the ball and guiding them into them and getting your shot off. Caleb Grill's a master.
I mean, he forced Grant Huffman to go underneath numerous screens.
Well, it's also hard because Missouri runs a lot of good action. Like you never go underneath screens unless it's in the corner. And then you have to follow hip pocket on his strong hand, and it's very weird. And it's like Huffman just couldn't guard him. It's just simple, like he couldn't get there, and Magnon did a hell of a job. MJ Collins couldn't guard him.
And that's not a knock on Huffman and Collins.
Most people can't guard him.
Most of the SEC, actually nobody this year in SEC play has been able to guard him.
Before the Vanderbilt game, he was shooting. He started off hot, but ended up not shooting well. He's shooting 44% from 3 before the game. Yeah. Before that game during the season. That's incredible.
He's a sniper.
So they have some talent, but Chris Magnon was incredible. Another guy that needs some credit, AJ Hogarth.
Yep.
Obviously, Tyler Nickel gets credit. He's getting the credit, as he should. But AJ Hogarth had his best game in a long time. And he still did some frustrating things, still had some mistakes. He's your point guard. That's going to happen. Unless he's a first-round draft pick, your point guard's going to make mistakes. But majority of the decisions Hogarth made were incredible. Yeah. And I thought he played a hell of a game, and he helped close that game out at the end and made some key buckets when you needed him, made key passes when you needed him.
And it was so, I don't mean to cut you off, but it was so refreshing to watch, because what have we been saying on the past couple pods whenever we've been giving criticism about AJ Hogarth? He's not going strong to the bucket. He's not finishing strong. What did he do in that game? Man, he finished strong. Well, he used his size. He used his bounce, and he finished strong at the rim.
I stated incorrectly. I think it was 81-78 when Nickel hit the three. I think I said 82-79 earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. I just realized that. That's irrelevant to what you were saying, but yes. I do want to point out a couple more things on the box score before we go to questions. Edwards had 17 points, solid game. Nickel actually only had 12, even though he hit 2 threes in very key moments. It took him a while to get going.
Vanderbilt as a whole could not shoot a 3-ball in the first half. They were like, what, 1 of 13 in the first half?
And the only make was Hogarth.
Hogarth, yeah.
McLaughlin, 7 points, 8 rebounds. Going to the bench, Jalen Carey, a quiet game, but still had 10 boards. Quiet game offensively, had 6, but had a key finish late in the stretch of that game. Tyler Tanner played pretty well. 17 minutes, 4 points. He's never going to be a big offensive output guy this season, but
shot another 3 or tried.
Yeah, 2 turnovers, 2 assists. He was okay. JQ Roberts seems to have made his way into the rotation slightly based on his play when he's seen the court. He's not playing a lot of minutes, but he's playing 2 to 5 minutes a game, which is huge.
And they're important minutes.
Yes, you need
important minutes.
That sounds insignificant, but when you have only 2 big men, 2 5s on your roster before this, and now you have a guy that can spell those guys, and you love playing them in combo.
Yeah.
Now you're like, I can play that 2-man lineup a little more because I have a guy that can play 5 minutes and not shit the bed.
Yeah.
And actually contribute more than just that, like bring energy into the lineup.
So, be a defensive weapon in the Texas A&M game. Be a not just somebody who can hold his own. No, you got a weapon on the defensive end.
And the only returning scholarship player actually contributing. It's nice.
Shout out to him, man. Been through hell and back, I imagine, with Jerry Stackhouse.
Yeah. And then MJ Collins Jr. had a solid game contributing from the bench. 7 points, 3 of 5 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3. Had a very key 3 late in that game as well.
Before we go on, I want to ask you about MJ Collins. I know he hasn't put it together to where he's had he did have that one show out game early on in the season in non-con.
He had a good game against A&M.
And he had a good game against A&M. But do you watch him, though, and you kind of think, man, if he could put it together, he could be, like, the guy? Or is that just me?
No, he has every tool. It's the ability to get to the basket handling the ball that's holding him back right now. He has a good enough jumper. He has the athleticism.
Be the most athletic guy on the team.
So yeah, if he can put it all together, he can be a real X factor difference maker. But Vanderbilt 2-0 against 2 top 15 teams, moved them kind of firmly into that 8-9 seed, some even 7 in the bracketology discussion. So Vanderbilt is not on the bubble, and that means something very different for the first time than it did since 2012.
Wow.
Vanderbilt's not on the bubble because they're in the tournament.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I think I saw Barstool tweet that. Barstool Vandy tweet.
Yeah,
they're not on the bubble for the first time, and it's not the way you think. So let's go to these VIP premium member questions and see what they're about. We will first go through the basketball ones, and then after the cocktail break, we'll go through the baseball questions. All right, number 1, right on cue, about bracketology. I think we're getting anywhere from a 7 to 9 seed. But just as a thought experiment, would you prefer a 10 seed over an 8/9, an 11 seed over a 10? I'd like the 11. So what do you think, Trevor? Where would you sit? Because that's something we've talked about and discussed.
That's a really interesting question. Who asked that?
Bex 4VU.
Oh, he's a good dude.
I have my answer if you need a sec.
Give me yours first.
So I big time prefer a 10 over an 8 or a 9.
But what about a 7?
No, I want a 7.
Okay, because I'm the same way. I didn't want to get I would prefer a 10 over an 8 and 9, because an 8 and 9 you got to play the number 1 immediately.
Literally the only thing, and this is I think where they're going to end up. Unfortunately, and either way, I'm going to be happy to see their name called. But
yes,
I think they're going to be an 8 or a 9, and that's my least favorite seed to be. So because that means that you have a very favorable even matchup in round 1, but as far as making a fun run in the tournament,
the 32, you're already playing the number 1 seed.
Playing a number 1 seed. So I'm going to take a 10 seed over an 8 or a 9 in my brain. I know that's not how it works, but obviously I don't think I'm taking an 11 because then in round 1 you're playing a very much higher quality opponent, but I can understand how the thought experiment works. It's like you just have to pull one upset, then you're playing a much lower tier team in a 3 seed.
I will say this. I posted this on the board, so shout out to the homie Will Warren, who runs a college basketball analytics Substack, Stats by Will on Twitter. I asked him what he thought about Vanderbilt's seeding opportunities between the 10, 9, 8, and 7. He said for the 10, he says he does not think, from everything he's seen in the metrics and the win above bubbles, he does not think a 10 is a possibility anymore. He says that Vanderbilt would have to lose out and lose in the first round of the tournament, and he doesn't think that's going to happen. He thinks that 8 or a 9 is possible, but he says whenever you compare Vanderbilt's resume to other 8 and 9 seeds as of right now, he says it's much better and it's much more comparable to a 7 seed. He goes, now for them to make a 7 would take some work, but it's not impossible. He goes, you'd have to win out, which he thought was possible, and he thinks you'd have to make it in the semis of the SEC tournament.
See, I'm obviously not I'm not paying attention at the level of some of these guys. So, I'm not meaning to disagree. I think if they win the last 2 games, they are a 7.
You don't think anything's needed in the tournament? Really? Okay.
I think that we are still in some weird world where people think the tournament matters to the committee.
I'm kind of like on the edge. I'm like, it doesn't, but there's a part of me that does.
I think I don't think it affects inner seeding that way. I think it can be the difference in the bubble teams. But in my opinion, I don't think if you win 2 games or if you get knocked in the second round that you drop down to a 9 seed from a 7 seed because of 1 game against a high quality opponent in a tournament setting.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion. I look at Vanderbilt's resume. They are 20-9. Their non-con strength of schedule is cheeks. It's terrible. Yeah. However, their conference wins and their wins are good. Like their resume objectively, I'm not trying to be the Vanderbilt guy. I look at it and I'm like, Kentucky's a 4. Kentucky's a 4 or 5 seed. Vanderbilt's resume, besides a couple by 1 win,
Alabama's a 2 seed.
Yeah, like Kentucky had a win over Kansas, right, in the non-con. Outside of that win, Kentucky and Vanderbilt's resumes are basically the same.
Well, and Kansas isn't good.
But that's my point is because Kentucky started higher. I was ranting about this to somebody. I was like, there's still an inherent issue with these net rankings in that if you are ranked high going into the season, you don't shit the bed during non-con play, and you get into conference play, and you're about 14, you can't fall that far.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're Vanderbilt and you start really low, even if you go 12-1 and go 8-8, you can never get to where you would be if you started up there with the same resume. Because I look at Kentucky and I'm like, there should not be a 4 to 5 seed separation based on resume. Now, based on watching them, whatever you want to say, but I thought we judged on resumes. I didn't think we watched or
on
judged
on
the eye test in Kentucky. They're Kentucky. So they're a 4 seed. No, Vanderbilt's resume is just as good. So that's where I think if they win these last two, 22-9 regular season with 10-8 in conference, multiple, 4 or 5 top 15 wins.
4 right now.
4 top 15 wins. I think no way in hell that is a 9 seed or an 8 seed.
No, and right now, if the season ended, Vanderbilt is very much comfortably an 8 seed. Will also did say in each year the committee they don't change how they evaluate teams, but for a while it was RPI was sexy. Now net is sexy. Now he says the new metric this year that the committee really likes is wins above bubble, which is a metric used to how many wins you have above the bubble. It sounds simple. It's really not. And if you look at Vanderbilt's win above bubble, they're in the top percentile. And he goes, if they go by that the way he thinks they will, he thinks Vanderbilt could be a 7 seed.
Okay, 7 would be the ideal seed for me.
I agree.
That would be unbelievable to be a 7 seed. That sets you up where you're playing a 2 seed, not one of the elite teams if you can pull off the win, but you're a higher seed in round 1, so you're probably going to get a mid-major level team, which does always scare me, or a very underperforming high major team.
Yeah.
But
did he ask us which of the 4 we'd like to play, or am I making that up? No. Okay.
All right, on to the next question. Okay, I think this is basketball. Who you with, VU asks. If you guys had to ballpark the total cost of this year's basketball team versus next season, what do you think we're looking at in total money? I will assume that several players will get a raise, and we should be able to have more money to play with in finding replacements. I'll add that whatever this year's team cost was very well worth the money. So this is me guessing beyond guessing, because we only really have confirmation of one, or not even confirmation. We only really know one player's amount he's making on the team, and that's Hogard. I don't know if those numbers are public or not, so I'm not going to say them. If I had to guess, I would say this year's roster is around $3 million, $2 to $3 million. Pure guess from me.
I'm on my calculator right now trying to factor
Trevor's doing some numbers over here. So if I had to fully guess, because I know what their highest paid player is making, and they're dealing with a lot of guys this year that didn't necessarily command NIL money. If you're, for example, like Jason Edwards coming from North Texas,
I have it right at $2.5 million.
Okay, so
you're really close.
So that's like Jason. These guys are being paid money, but they weren't commanding those insane numbers you're seeing, because none of these guys were outside of. I think Mannion was the highest rated transfer they had. Him and Hogard.
Yes.
Depending on what site you looked on, and Hogard's the highest paid player, I believe,
correct,
on the team.
Correct.
And so I'm assuming these other guys are some percentage of what Hogard is making. And when I run the numbers, and I know some guys aren't being paid at all. Or at least a very minimal amount. So I would say between 2 and 3, and you said 2.5.
2.5 is what this team
now
is.
Next year,
that will be bumped up a considerable.
They are losing their highest paid player.
Yes.
So that's going to free up a lot of money, but they will have some guys they're going to have to pay. And Tyler Nickel, Jason Edwards, they're going to have to get bumps. Carey's going to have to get a small bump. However, I don't think Carey's going to demand interest from other schools the same way that those guys are. I don't think 6'8" posts are very popular.
Yeah.
And I love Jalen Carey. I want him on Vanderbilt. I love him on the court for my
and he
team.
Deserves a raise.
But I'm saying
that too, yeah.
Transfers, schools that are going to be pursuing him and offering him $600K, they're not looking for 6'8", 5 men to offer $600,000 a year.
That is true.
They are looking for 6'7" 3 men that can bury threes in Tyler Nickel.
They are.
And so I'm not even saying that Nickel's quote unquote better or more important or anything. Maybe I am, but
just in terms of the market,
he's going to be. Now Tanner's one that you're going to have to also pay.
You're going to have to pay Tanner.
How
much?
That's the question.
That's
he's from Nashville.
Question.
But yeah, I would say next year I would bump that by about 50%. I would say next year's roster, because they're going to want to bring in some more talent. I would say that next year, because the proof of concept has been put out there, I would say next year's are 4 to 5. somewhere in there, and that's
would.
high. I'd say 5's the high, 4 is probably average, and it could
I was
be as
going to
low as-
say 6.
okay, yeah, somewhere around there.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
That's our guess based on nothing, just knowing what we pay, knowing what guys are being paid. And Vanderbilt, with the momentum they have built, is going to look to add a couple higher profile guys this year, and they're going to be interested.
Yeah.
That's the change. Is this year you kind of had to build something. Now it's like you have your base. Vanderbilt is a 7 seed. I can slide over here. A couple of these guys would be a 3 seed. Like that's the pitch now. The pitch last year was come be a part of a rebuild and we can do something special.
Yeah.
The pitch this year is we need 2 more pieces and we're a contender.
Well,
like,
and also
as dumb as it sounds, like that's what you're away. You're a star 5-man, 1 more shooter / scorer, and you're as good as anybody in the country.
Well, and from the collective's perspective too, another thing is, hey, we can pay you.
Yep.
I posted this on the board a couple days ago. Somebody within the collective told me that money will not be an issue when it comes to basketball next year. The bank is loaded.
Love that. And also,
revenue sharing. Revenue sharing, you have to factor that in as well.
The main part of this is it's amazing how much more willing, same with football, same with everything, how much more willing donors are when they've seen it proved out.
Yes.
It's like my money, actually, I'm investing in this collective.
You're getting ROI.
And the teams I'm watching are getting better in front of my eyes. And that's appealing.
Yeah.
Like, before you were just donating $10 million to like practice, whatever it was, $100,000.
Have your name on a building.
Yeah, and they put your name on a building. It's like now it's like I can watch the sports I enjoy and they're better. My experience on Saturdays is better. My experience at Memorial is better. Like if you're a very wealthy guy or individual or business, like it's a good opportunity.
Yeah.
In Nashville, and also you get a little ROI if that attention starts coming.
Yeah.
Like Pavia, those sponsorships are no longer just randomly supporting the players. Now you're starting to talk about the return on investment for the businesses.
Well, you want to talk about a business that is probably thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, we invested low and we are making some cash. Is First Bank. First Bank is in a hog heaven right now.
First Bank got more mentions as the stadium sponsor this last year than the name of Vanderbilt or anything associated with Vanderbilt's field has ever gotten. Vanderbilt Stadium was never mentioned. First Bank, the bank, was mentioned constantly.
Yes.
And that's also hell of a sponsor to pull because the bank is
a great name. The bank.
Thank God we're not sponsored by Safelite like Ohio State.
Safelite Repair. Safelite.
And I already said this. Safelite, great business. Yeah. I love Safelite.
Or Safelite's cool. Pilot, like a gas station in Neyland. Tennessee Vols presented by the Pilot gas station.
Or whatever the hell. All right. Next question. Okay, this is another basketball. Tomcat2823. Says, I've seen a great deal of posts telling CSL to lock Byington up with either a raise and or extension. He's done an amazing job, but do you think she'll be gun shy because of the Stackhouse extension fiasco?
Off rip, we do not read these beforehand.
No.
Tomcat 2823. I'm pretty positive that's my dad because 28 is my birthday. 23 is my brother's birthday. My dad's name's Tommy. My mom's name's Kat. That's my dad.
That's gotta be your dad.
I hate to dox you, Dad. That's my dad.
You think your dad's been shit posting?
My dad's like, yo, that Hack Squad Jim Duggan kid sucks, dude.
We're gonna look at his previous posts. He's just gonna be shitting on every podcast.
He's like, TDR ass.
These guys suck. Where's Chris?
I clicked him out. I was like, that sounds familiar.
So the next, I want to read the next one from Frida's boss because it answers his opinion on that. He said, if she loses Byington because of her mistake extending Stack, she will need to be fired immediately.
To answer my dad's question, I think you have to pay him because, shout out to the old heads, you don't want another Eddie Fogler situation to where you have I don't want to say generational coach, you have a really, really good basketball coach and you don't pay him and he goes somewhere like Kentucky.
I've got to add in a couple things.
Yeah.
So if Mark Byington continues down this trajectory, unless Vanderbilt is willing to make him the highest paid coach in the history of basketball, college basketball, he will be getting offers and looks. And the contract,
yes,
and the actual money will have nothing to do with it.
You think it'll be the basketball prestige?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain level of money you hit, and he's probably he of course would like a raise and all that. Like you can do all that. But there's only so much you can do with that, and he's not going to agree to some crazy buyout thing in a contract extension. He's not. So, like, anything that restricts him, he's not going to. So, I don't want... The Stackhouse thing, of course, is going to be a pause for her. she's going to have to really evaluate.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point.
However, this is undoubtedly more than Jerry Stackhouse ever did. And also, I do want to add, they just signed him last year. So as far as like renegotiating and extending the contract after this season, if that's something he's demanding, you're just not going to keep him.
You don't extend him if he's demanding it.
No. I don't mean. Okay, pause. I phrased that wrong. If he's demanding that after that season, you're not going to be able to.
Oh, okay.
That's what I meant. No, I think they
gotcha.
will, and they should if he's demanding it. But I'm saying if he's demanding that, that means he has his sights really set on the contract situation stuff, and he's looking to cash in. I don't see that with Byington. But yeah, I think if he continues any sort of success into next season whatsoever, you basically tell him, if this carries over at all, we're backing up the Brinks truck for you. And like, regardless, even if it doesn't carry over, you struggle a little bit, that's still on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think you have to do whatever you can to keep him. I think Byington is the man. I would extend him if it was just me placing $100 on it. But also, you don't want to get in the situation you were in with Stackhouse. That's where it's like, he's done it 1 year. This is incredible. I think he's incredible. I think he will continue to do it. I want to see him in a full off season of recruiting first. I want to see what pieces of his staff he loses this year. I want to see how all of that goes before I'm willing to back up the Brinks truck. Because when you extend this contract for him, you're backing up the Brinks truck.
Yeah.
And there's no going back.
That is a really good point.
So it's not that I'm opposed to it. If they announce some big extension, I'm going to say yay. I'm not going to be mad about it.
Yeah.
But if I was AD, I would have talks with them. They communicate like people. It's not like emails and they communicate. I'd be like, we love what you were doing.
Yeah.
We want to give you an extension. You know the experience we had previously. This has nothing to do with you. It's just we've got to cover our bases. Yeah, we can't go from having something that I was being called for my job to putting myself in the exact same situation before we've ever seen you do a full recruiting cycle. And I think any intelligent man would not view that as a slight at how you view him. It would view it as like, yeah, I've been the coach here for 9 months. And I mean,
it's a good point. Yeah.
Yes. And I agree with Freitas as well that if they lose him, we really got to start questioning CSL.
I would agree with that as well.
And I have a lot of positive things to say.
I would agree.
But I'm also not willing. I don't want to shit on her because she's the one that hired him as well. So, like, let's give her credit now because Clark Lee seems to be a good hire and Byington seems to be a good hire.
Yeah.
And
she seems to be 2 for 2 right now.
3 for 3. Shea Ralph seems to be a good hire. Oh, my God,
Shea Ralph. Yeah, she's 3 for 3.
And Clark Lee still may be on the fence, but after what we saw last year, he's not. So my battery's running low. God. Okay, whatever. We got to read another question. Why is my battery running low? Whatever. Okay. Next question is a lot of basketball today. Good. Next is, if we do end up an 8/9 seed, which 1 seed would you rather potentially face?
I was just manifesting this question. Duke.
Really?
Because I think the SEC is so good. Tennessee's really, really good. Auburn is the best team in the nation. I think Houston is actually my sleeper to win it all. I think Duke is really, really good, but also the ACC is so historically bad. I don't think they're as good as we think they are.
That's a really tough question. Because my immediate response, I don't want to play Houston, and I didn't want to play Duke. So it's very funny that you picked Duke.
I would rather play Duke than those
because they were actually talking about that on, I think, 102.5 today about the potential matchups for Vanderbilt on the bubble. Actually, some Vanderbilt talk. It was pretty great. Yeah. And the 2 hosts of 102.5, it was Willie Donick and somebody else. Willie Donick had called in.
Was it the morning show?
I don't remember what it was, but one of them was
Robbie
a Duke fan, and one of them was Vanderbilt. And they were like, "Oh, we'd be having a schoolhouse rumble if that was going on." But Duke scares me. Duke's just incredibly talented. Like, they are so talented. I think the talent of Duke would just beat Vanderbilt in a tournament setting. I'm going to go a little bit separate. I want to play either Tennessee or Auburn.
Really?
I don't think this committee's going to let that happen. I don't think that's a possibility. But we've seen them.
Yeah.
You have seen Tennessee and you have seen Auburn. And you know, without a doubt, the confidence, they can play with them. And they know they can beat them.
Yeah.
And they had Auburn on the ropes and blew it. And
they did.
And they beat Tennessee and then had them on the ropes again and blew it. So those are 2 teams, and confidence is so key in basketball, is knowing you can. It's kind of like the 4-minute mile. Before somebody did it, it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like somebody did it. Now everybody's doing it. It's like Vanderbilt's beaten Tennessee. They know they can beat these 1 seeds in the SEC. They know they're just as good as anybody. The wind's blowing crazy
That
right
was
now.
wild.
Yeah, it's blowing in through our vent, through our
Oh,
through
my
our
word,
stove
dude.
right
I
now.
thought it was about to
Yeah.
blow the wall.
But yeah, I like your answer, but it's funny that I just have a completely different.
See, I'm just not high on Duke because statistically, the ACC is at an all-time bad conference right now.
It's funny that you were like Houston. So I actually sat down and watched the Houston-Kansas game
I
at the
think
airport
Houston's really
during the
good.
delay, and I thought they were really good. I also watched Duke, and I had the thought of the ACC is bad, so it's hard to judge.
Mhm.
This Duke team is incredible.
Cooper Flag's different.
Yeah, that was the
He's
part.
different.
He is. It felt like I was watching an NBA level player play against college kids, which you are. You're watching a guy that could go average 20 a night. In the
You're
NBA.
watching a white Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
is what you're watching.
That's what I looked at that and I said, genuinely, even with Magnon, MJ, there's no one that can guard him on Vanderbilt's team. And nobody really in the country. But specifically, what scares me about him is he can shoot. He can do it all. Vanderbilt has no rim protection. Yeah. And that's a strong term because they actually do have good rim protection. For elite drivers, they don't have the height. Yeah. They need a 6'11", 7-footer inside to scare people away from the paint. McLaughlin's great with his reach, but he's 6'7", 6'8". Yeah. Carey's great with his stockiness, size, his power. Not afraid of contact, but he's 6'8". Mm-hmm. It's like that's what scares me about Duke. All these teams kind of have that, but I know that Vanderbilt can match up with Tennessee is the one I would love to play. They're never going to let that happen. Mm-hmm. I think Tennessee is unequivocally the worst 1 seed. I think whoever's in that slot is the worst.
I do think Tennessee is the worst 1 seed.
Well, I think Auburn, Duke, and Houston are the 3-1 seeds. They are, and then whether it's Bama, whether it's Tennessee, whoever jumps into that spot, I think that is the one you want to play.
I think I think it would go Auburn, Houston, Tennessee, Duke are from best to worst.
Okay, really? See, I go
my personal opinion.
I go Auburn, Duke, Houston, Tennessee. I'm not as low on Duke. I think that I understand fully what they could come out and shit the bed, and it wouldn't shock me. Mm-hmm. But I think I often do the same thing as I did it with Tennessee baseball last year in some ways. Is like wrongly attributing a team dominating bad to mediocre teams with them being not as good as you expected versus they just haven't had the opportunity to play incredible competition consistently. Yeah. And that can hurt you in tournament time, and that's why they could lose. But I think Duke just beat Wake Forest by like 40.
Yeah,
like
that's
just
a tournament team.
Just literally, I mean, it wasn't even competitive from the beginning.
I was watching that game last night. That was a nasty game.
One more year.
I was
his
like,
parents were laughing.
Dude, that kid is that he's already signed the New Balance deal. He's not coming back.
Duke students also knew, but it was very funny seeing his parents and him laugh as he exited the court, knowing it's not going to be one more year, guys. Let's continue with these questions because my laptop is dying slowly but surely, and I clicked off the message board. So 1 second. As I get back to behind closed doors, subscribe to Vanderbilt.
You're on my dad's profile, so you're just shit talking me.
Exactly. So now I got to find the questions again because I cannot find them questions. Okay. Thank you for the question, Tommy. Next, that wasn't Tommy. That was Pepperdor. Actually, somebody responded with the 8-9 seed and said, "Give me Duke." That was somebody else's response.
Okay, hell yeah.
Said. Then Frida's boss said Duke. Number 1, UT Junior, then Bama, then Florida's not a 1 seed, then Houston, then Auburn. So kind of similar. I must be higher on Duke than other people. I didn't realize that. I knew that people had the thought they were rated. I didn't think that was as universally held.
I think Auburn is by far and away the best team in the nation.
We are in agreement on that, brother. I think everyone on the board is like, I don't want to play. That doesn't mean they'll win a natty. That doesn't mean that in the tournament setting of the NCAA. But I think right now Auburn is the best basketball team in the country. I think most people, I test statistically, wins, players, everything. They're the best team in the country.
I agree.
All right. Next up is JRob1742 said, did Jerry Stackhouse need just one more year? I think it was this season.
The streets are saying.
So that's what
he might have needed one more year.
Stack, all he was saying, we were confusing. He was just saying in 2025, no matter what, this team's going to get good. That was what he meant. He's like, it doesn't matter who the coach is. He just needed one more year.
God. Where is he at now? Is he still in Golden State?
Yeah, I think he's an assistant coach there.
Jeez Louise.
Okay, next up, we have 2 questions on this from World's Strongest Vandy fan. We're going to read the basketball one now and go back to the baseball one later. He said 2 questions, and my goal is not to get Will started on a rant for the 3rd straight week. Good luck with that, pal. He said basketball. Can we get a list of guys who are returning for next season or have eligibility left? With all the transfers and guys listed as graduates and seniors on the roster, it's kind of hard to keep up. I agree. That is very true. They're losing Hogard. They're losing Huffman. They're losing
Colson Messer.
Yeah, I don't count. I'm talking about players that play.
Players that play, then that's all they're losing.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. The one I couldn't remember is
Hemingway. He's coming back.
And I could not remember. I know Nickel is a junior.
He's got another year.
Edwards is a junior.
Got another year.
Tanner is obviously a freshman. Carey's a sophomore. McLaughlin, I believe, is a junior. MJ Collins is a junior. Sophomore, junior. JQ Roberts is a sophomore, I believe. So yeah, I think they're just losing those two now. And I just don't.
Those are the only guys that were honored at senior night too.
Yeah.
And then the walk-ons.
The one I couldn't remember actually was Magnon. I couldn't remember if he had one more year. He does, I believe.
I think he has one more year.
The thing with basketball is I think a lot of these guys have transferred at least once, maybe twice in their careers. I would be really shocked if they have guys leave. Basketball is different than you like playing with certain guys, and these guys seem to play well together. If one guy transfers, that's not going to ring alarm bells. That just means they got one offer that's, if Nickel got offered his dream school, it wouldn't shock me if he left and it had nothing to do with, But I just don't see guys leaving this year.
I think guys that will leave are guys that didn't have playing time. Like I think Karis Bilal, I think he's a flight risk. JQ, I don't know. I mean,
I could see him.
I can see JQ with a guy that has the talent that he does being like, I want more minutes. Yeah. I could very well, especially God willing, Kajani Wright gets healthy and comes back.
Yep. Definitely could see JQ
leaving.
Yeah, but that's really it. I'm not that scared of, I don't think there's any way Tanner's leaving.
Well, it's also, we should note too that this was also breaking news on the sub was Jason Edwards, Tyler Nickel, and Tyler Tanner all did a TikTok live. And on the TikTok live, all three of them said they were going to be coming back next year. So they said that straight up like last night.
But that's kind of if you finally have found a place where you're winning for the first time in your career with consistent playing time, it's going to take a hell of an offer to get me off that team.
Yeah.
Where I'm in the rotation, I'm confident, I have confidence in my coach, I like my teammates. Take a lot of money and a good offer to get me off that team. So to get me off, pause. All right, a couple more basketball. Okay, that's not basketball. That's just comments to the Stackhouse said CSL thought so.
I still think that was a little bit of a psyop.
Okay, so from McNulty Nash 1.
I wonder who that is.
Says, okay, guys, what's the strategy for getting SEC tourney tickets and especially NCAA tickets? Should we go through Vanderbilt or buy them on our own? SEC tournament, buy them on your own.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I have no experience buying through the portal. I go to the SEC tournament. I try to go every year. Kentucky fans buy like 80% of the books. If Kentucky's not playing, you can get dirt cheap tickets
with good seats.
Yes,
with good seats.
So go through third-party sites like SeatGeek.
I go through Ticketmaster.
All the Kentucky fans list their individual games and individual sessions that they're not a part of, and they're so cheap. Now, if you're unfortunately a part of those sessions, you're screwed. Yeah. You got to go through Vandy.
Yeah.
But NCAA tournament, I guess go through Vandy. I have no clue.
Can't say I've ever bought NCAA March Madness tickets, so I don't.
Yeah, so
I don't know, Mark.
You'll have to ask somebody.
Mine's about to die now.
Yeah, you need to plug it up?
Yeah.
Okay. Trevor's got to plug up his laptop as both of ours are dying. Excuse TDR for our technical difficulties. Both of our laptops are dying. I left my laptop charger in Seattle. Amazon is bringing me a new one tomorrow. We had to exchange those, as Trevor has been kind enough to let me borrow his. But I'm going to try to run through these real quick before my laptop dies, as it is on 7%. Okay, somebody said the thing about Kentucky. Then somebody asked a good question. Jock City 1 says, say we win the SEC tournament. I like this is the kind of questions that this is made for. What would the seed look like then? He said 5 ?
I was going to say a 5.
If they win the SEC tournament, I don't think the tournament can hurt you too much if you're solidly in. I think it can help you some. I think you can jump teams. You can say it would hurt you because you got jumped, but I don't think like they look at the tournament and it knocks you more than any individual game does. And I don't think it will boost you. But if you win 4 straight against high quality competition,
Yeah.
you're going to boost up a couple seeds.
Like, let's say they beat Auburn in the championship.
So, yeah, I would say 5 seed at the worst. I think you could even see them at a 4 seed if they won the SEC tournament.
Yeah.
Legitimately. Like,
because that's what, 5 more wins?
That would add, depending on how many buys they get. There's a lot to play out because you can get potentially they can move up to getting a bye or playing in round 1.
I think right now they're slated to play on Wednesday in round 1.
Technically round 2, but round 1 is technically the play-in games, and then round 2. But they potentially, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's 5. I don't know. I've got to look at the bracket. Somebody gave a response giving some advice to Mark about tickets, so that's good. We don't have to read that. Last question says, Trevor and William, do you think that a prime Mark Byington could beat any current player in a game of one-on-one? I think he is dunking on Jason Edwards.
No, he couldn't. A prime Mark Byington could not beat any of these guys.
Keep going.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, Mark Byington didn't play college basketball at a super high level. These guys are playing at D1 SEC level. Mark Byington at his prime is not beating or dunking on any of these guys. I'm not even sure Mark Byington in his prime could dunk.
Disagree.
Really? You think he could probably dunk in his prime?
Strong disagree.
Oh, you think he's got some bounce?
I think Mark Byington could beat a few guys on this roster in his prime.
Who?
Basically, anybody that you have, Jordan Williams, Messer, any of those guys, and I think he probably could.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't counting those guys.
I do want to say, I'm not trying to disagree. He played at UNC Wilmington for 4 years. He didn't play nowhere.
I mean,
but where did these guys come from that are on this roster?
Everybody other than JMU
But I'm saying my point is that. And I'm not saying that Byington would have been a superstar, but I'm like, in prior years, you know where Jason Edwards would have been his whole career? At a fucking community college in the North Texas. You know where Jalen Carey would have been? JMU his whole career.
Mm-hmm.
That's where Miss Magnon, Davidson, or Cornell would have been his whole career.
Yeah.
Davidson was Hemingway, right?
Yes.
So that's where those guys would have been their whole career.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I'm not shitting on him. But Byington played at the D1 level, so my laptop's dead, so good timing.
There we go.
So I think that is all the basketball questions. Is there anything else you want to add on basketball here that we did not hit on in the questions as I try to bring up rivals?
No, I think that was it.
Yep, that's it for basketball. We have baseball coming up next. I have none of my notes, so I'm going to be swinging it to Trevor. So
that's what I'm here for.
Let's take ourselves a TDR cocktail break, and we will be right back to talk some VandyBoys baseball. Welcome back into episode 305 of the Door Report, and welcome back from the TDR cocktail break. We've already been going about 50 minutes. Trevor is going to be in attendance tonight.
Indeed.
At the Vanderbilt-Arkansas game that tips at 9 p.m. Central Time. We did not want to spend a lot of time previewing the Arkansas and Georgia games because Arkansas game is going to have already happened when you listen to this.
Yeah.
So a preview would be really pointless, but they're missing a couple key players. You want to name those players real quick?
Yeah, they're missing Big Boogie and Boogie Fland and Adu Thero. I always butcher his name. I'm still not sure if that's the correct pronunciation because every time I watch Arkansas basketball, every commentator says it 4 different ways. It's like with Magnon. They're like, Mannion, Manon, Magnon, Mananon. And they're just like, nobody says it the right way once. So I could be butchering his name. They're both out. I will say Thero accounts for 16 points a game. 6 boards is obviously their leading scorer. Boogie Fland accounts for 15 points a game, so they're missing 31 points of their total offense tonight.
Yeah, and South Carolina coming off a butt whooping courtesy of South Carolina at home.
Yeah.
You hearing what?
Dude, I thought that was a baby.
Trevor's having severe anxiety right now with every noise that is happening around
Did you not think that was a baby?
I thought that was an ambulance siren.
I was like, is there a baby in here?
Yeah, not a baby. That made me lose my train of thought. You had panic in your eyes.
Dude, I looked scared.
Yeah, but Arkansas is coming off a bad loss. I wanted to get this game tonight can go two ways. And a team coming off a loss that was on the bubble and still technically can get into the tournament from Arkansas, but it's a tough path now.
Yeah.
As they play Vanderbilt and then Mississippi State. It's a very tough path. They kind of had it in the palm of their hand and they blew it. And that can go two ways. Either that can light a fire under your team's ass and they can come out and play the best two games they played all season. The more likely scenario is it disheartens them and they're just destroyed and it's broken them.
Yeah.
And I think so. I think either Arkansas can come out and play aggressive, intense, and they're going to come out and be just on fire, or they're going to come out looking very disinterested.
Yeah.
And I could see this game. Vanderbilt could lose. And this I hate when people do it, but I'm doing it. Vanderbilt could lose this game by 15. Vanderbilt could win this game by 40.
Yeah.
I truly believe
I agree with that.
I have no way to know because it's not going to even depend on Vanderbilt. It's going to be how Arkansas comes out because this could be a team that's broken. They had expectations to be in top 5 in the SEC this year. And even with all the disastrous start, they had played themselves into a potential tournament team to salvage the season. And then you lose that game to South Carolina, and boy, that puts you on the wrong side of the bubble.
Yeah.
It does. So that can really mess with teams' heads, especially a lot of these quality of guys that they have there under Coach Cal, that these are stars. These are highly recruited guys, and they're just not playing well. They're losing games they shouldn't. So I kind of have a prediction that I unfortunately think they're going to lose, and I'm putting it out there because everything I say has gone like the opposite recently. So, but I can see, but I posed the question to you before we started this, and I know we're supposed to be talking about baseball. But Coach Cal, in his coaching career, you were saying he's got all this experience. He's been there before. And I said, wait, has he been there before?
Yeah.
Has Coach Cal in his coaching career ever been in this position? Not in a position of a disappointing season, not in the but in a position where it's a disappointing season.
He's
and
fighting for his life.
And you have the last 2 games of the season and it's make or break. Do you make the tournament? Like, has he been in that situation more than once or twice, more than like an average coach in his 3rd season?
I don't think so.
Or 5th season? I don't know. So that's an interesting one because with all that experience, I don't think he's been on the bubble a lot. And that's a different button to push on those teams when they're trying to make a bubble. So Phoebe's hair
is just getting everywhere. I agree. I think tonight's going to be a very interesting matchup. I said this to you before we started recording. An animal is most dangerous when it's cornered. And Arkansas is a cornered basketball program right now, to where it really is survive and advance for them right now. So they're backed into a corner. How are they going to respond? I agree. It can go 2 ways. They can come out and they can be on fire, or they could be very deflated. Cornered animals are dangerous. With Boogie Fland and Thero being out, who's going to even if they come out on fire, who's going to step up?
Cornered animals can be dangerous. They can also do really stupid things that result in hurting themselves.
True. Yes,
and in that desperation.
Yeah.
So I think and then some of them can give up. So I think there's.
Yeah, and that's, you just roll over.
It can even be with Arkansas. It's not like maybe the team came out just it can be the first sign of trouble. They start trying to do too much, starting to overcorrect for things and saying, oh, this is going bad. We've seen this before. And they start trying to do too much instead of the most overused term in all sports, playing within yourself, playing within your game. That's another part of this. So it's an interesting matchup tonight for a lot of reasons. But after Arkansas, Vanderbilt plays Georgia on the road. Georgia and Arkansas, and I don't have my laptop, so this is all off the dome. I believe they're both 6-10 in the SEC. So these are 2 teams that Vanderbilt, in theory, should be able to beat both of them, but I think they will split. I have no idea which one is the win and which one is the loss, but I think they'll split.
Georgia, another team that's fighting right now. Both teams are fighting for berths.
Both those teams are the most heavy bubble teams you can imagine. That if they can win out, they're in. If they go 1-1, big question.
They might be toast.
If they go 0-2, they're done. So it's 2 teams, and they're both dangerous animals.
Yeah.
So should we go to baseball now? Somebody's attempting to call me.
Do you want to take the call live on TDR?
I don't have the number, so I'm guessing it's spam.
Yeah, if I don't have the number, I'm not answering it. But yeah, we can go to VandyBoys baseball. We started out on a positive note for about an hour of the pod. Now, in true TDR fashion, it's time to get a little bit negative. Yep. So
I've got the scores, so I'll run through those, and then you can actually give your thoughts on the game.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I've got the box scores and everything.
Perfect. So Vanderbilt went to the Excuse me as I burp. The Southern California College Baseball Classic.
Mouthful.
Yes, split between Los Angeles, California, and Irvine, California. A couple of different parks they played at. So game one of that series was against a very high-quality opponent, UCLA. Yeah. Started out the season 7-2, known kind of for a tradition of good baseball programs.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt came out, dominated. Really positive start to the weekend for Vanderbilt. Just kept the bats rolling from what you saw last weekend. 8-3 victory over UCLA, moving Vanderbilt to 9-1. Vanderbilt ranked number 14 in the country. Feeling really good. Brody Johnston got his first home run of his career.
Yeah.
Feeling very good. However, I don't know what happens. The bats fell apart. I didn't get to watch, as I mentioned earlier, because it was on Big Ten Plus.
Yeah.
There are a couple rants I want to go on. I haven't gotten to go on because this podcast would be 3 hours.
It's still crazy that UCLA is Big Ten.
That's one part. I pay for the sports package on Hulu Live TV. I pay an irresponsible amount to have live TV and to have access to every sporting event through one sign-in. Because if there's one thing that I will pay for that I need, it is that.
Yeah.
I'm willing to give up everything else to have that. Why doesn't that include Big Ten Plus? I'm not willing to pay for another conference's premium serve. Why?
Who knows?
Whatever.
We have ACC Network.
That's wrong.
We have the ACC Network.
But we have Big Ten Network, but that was Big Ten Plus.
Yeah.
So that was like
SEC Network Plus.
So I was not able to watch. But then Vanderbilt goes on to play USC, who's also 8-1 or 7-1 going into the game. Lost USC 3-1.
Yeah.
Good program. So I was willing to kind of take that one, crumple it up. You have a bad bat game, but the defense and pitching still looked solid. Only gave up 3 runs. Then you played a winless or 1-win UConn baseball team and got your brains bashed in. Got beat 6-2 by a bad UConn baseball team. I think that's kind of known.
Yeah.
I didn't get to watch any of them. You kept up with it. What happened?
Yeah.
What's going on? Because you've had more of a negative view of this team in a way.
Even
a lot of
preseason,
fans.
I told people, I was like, preseason, this team is not going to be to what our traditional VandyBoys expectation is. In terms of baseball, UCLA was a big win, 8-3, like you said. Brody Johnson had 4 ribbies. The USC game, just the bats, they looked lost at the plate. Pitching was decent, but whenever you get good pitching performances like that, your offense has to step up for you. What I do really want to focus on in terms of this weekend was the one game in particular is going to be the UConn game, which was incredibly disappointing. And people have asked on the board and on Twitter, is it time to hit the panic button? I think it was time to hit the panic button a long time ago whenever it comes to this VandyBoys team. I think in the offseason, it was probably time to hit the panic button. But, yeah, that UConn game was not good. Like you said, Vanderbilt lost 6-2. The offense was just not there. RJ Austin, 1 for 5. Rustin Rigdon, 0 for 2. Braden Holcomb. I don't know what is going on with Braden Holcomb. Didn't get a lot of ABs this weekend, but that was a guy that you were looking forward to say, hey, has the body of an MLB slugger, has the power of an MLB slugger. Can he put it together and see pitches well? And he's just not seeing the ball well at all. With 0 for 3 in that game, that is a guy that for a power production, Vanderbilt desperately needs to be a star, and he just has not answered the call once yet. And I don't want to throw the baby out of the bathwater with Braden Holcomb, because baseball is a fickle sport. You go through slumps and then you go through hot streaks. But he really hasn't gone through any hot streaks. He's been in nothing but a slump his entire Vanderbilt career. And so he's just not seeing the ball well. Overall, just offensively, very bad. J.D. Rogers, 0 for 2. Riley Nelson, who's been on fire and has been really good in terms of offense, 0 for 4. Vandy just could not get the bats going. But I think the big thing on this one was pitching, and we'll get into that too. But pitching was a disaster.
Yeah, we're not going to spend too much time on baseball because we already talked a lot of basketball, and we do have a couple board questions I want to get to. But I made a statement to you about, like, I watched the first 3-4 games, and it's like, it's all fun. This is all fun. We're still going to talk about it. The bats aren't good enough.
No.
I was like, and I watched the first 3-4 games, and I watched other teams. They're not good enough. This Vanderbilt team's not going to be that good this year.
And I don't want to hear people say it's too early to say that. No, it's not.
And
the bats aren't good.
look the exact same they did last year.
Yep.
And they weren't even close to good enough last year. You had to see a 50% jump. It needed to be apparent the difference in power they had, and it's not. There's no difference. Pitching might be slightly improved from last year, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's not going to do enough to get you to where you need to go. Vanderbilt was not an elite baseball team.
Well, I
last year.
think they still have issues even on the pitching side in terms of their weekend rotation. Like Ethan McIlvain has not been the guy that you wanted him to be thus far. I think Cody Bowker, and we'll get into him with the pitching, didn't have his best game Sunday, gave up 4 earned runs, did get 5 Ks though, but it's just like that weekend rotation that you're so used to being like, typically like your Friday guy is your ace, then Saturday's good, and then Sunday like is good, but you just kind of throw him out there. But Vanderbilt traditionally used to Friday, Saturday, Sunday all being aces, like MLB starter guys, and they just don't have that this year. And so I don't know. I know it's early, but I don't want to hear anybody tell me, oh, it's too early to make these assumptions. I said this preseason, I'll say this right now. The bats are a problem for Vanderbilt. And I don't see it getting any better as you get into conference play next week.
And this is where me and Trevor slightly split, is like we have the same grievances with the team, and they're not good enough. Now, Trevor had the very hot take of thinking this might be the first team in a lot of years that didn't make the tournament, or I still said that
I still am of that opinion.
Yeah, and I still, before the season, said something along the lines of, I think this team is still going to be slightly improved from last year. That could mean regional hosting. That could mean being a 2 seed. That doesn't mean I think they're going to be good enough to do anything. But like, I just don't see where they're taking a step back. Yeah. But I also don't really see where they're taking a big step forward. Yeah. So I'm just kind of like, they're going to be about what they were last year, which sucked. That's a strong term. They sucked for Vanderbilt standards.
Yeah.
Okay. They were still an NCAA baseball tournament team. Like, they were still good in that aspect. But compared to the expectations of being a national champion, they sucked compared to that. So,
and not this past weekend, but the weekend before, to where it seemed like the bats were so alive. Vanderbilt was getting so much production out of the bottom of that lineup. Like Jonathan Vastine was seeing the ball really well. Everybody in the bottom of the batting lineup was hitting the ball really, really well. And I tweeted, if the bottom of the lineup for Vanderbilt can keep this type of production up, this team is an Omaha team. And I stand by that. If the Vanderbilt lineup can hit like that, this is a Omaha team. They have the defense. I think the pitching is good enough, but it's just the bats, man. And the bats, they sort of showed us a flash, like, okay, we could be good, but then just took a step back.
I'm going to get to these questions before I forget, because my laptop died. My phone's not far behind. From WKU Door said, what was the biggest miss of the baseball offseason portal? Not adding a legit ace or not adding a big power bat? I think we answered that question. The pitching to me it's not great. It's not elite like Vanderbilt has had in past years. It's good enough.
It's good enough.
That's how I feel about the pitching. The biggest miss was just signing Mancini and bringing in a freshman and Brody Johnson. That was your answer to the power problems. Like, that wasn't enough, or even close to enough. And it's the refusal to adjust we've talked about from Corbin that I just don't think he ever is going to adjust. But they didn't bring any power in. They brought in Mancini and Johnston. And so far, they've kind of been solid in the limited action you've seen. But Vanderbilt needed to take a 50% jump in production. And the 2 guys aren't going to be able to do that for you. So when you lost talent from last year's roster. So, yes, not getting a power bat was much bigger of a problem than not getting an ace, because they got Bowker. They got a weekend starter through the portal. Like, they got and he's been good so far. He struggled against UConn, like you said, but he's been solid.
Sieber in the midweek has been really good.
Exactly. So I think they almost did what you wanted pitching-wise.
I agree.
They got a new starting pitcher. They got a midweek starter. They got a couple rotational guys, and they should have had a guy in Zierwa from Michigan State who kind of screwed them over and went back. But, so they would have really addressed that. They did that. They didn't do the bats. Well, they didn't address the bats.
I think it would have been reasonable to say, okay, McIlvain is going to take the step forward that we all think he will. And he just hasn't.
Yep.
He just hasn't.
The last baseball question was, do we panic now? Sitting our 3 best power hitters all weekend and dropping 2 of 3 doesn't seem like a good preview of what's coming in SEC play. I trust in Corbs, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And it seems as if he's bound and determined to go with the small ball approach. Yes, dear God.
Yeah. I mean, that's how he became Tim Corbin, is by small ball.
And I know people have said Rodgers and Holcomb have struggled, but how can you get a chance to improve if you're being set every other game? I agree with you there.
That's a great point.
Just can't seem to make it make sense. You have to have guys who have big bat potential in the lineup. You may lose with them, But if you don't play with them at all, you will lose because you don't have power.
That's
that was a great one. That was from World's Strongest VU fan.
That's a great post.
This is really hitting on, like, I got a reply on Twitter about my rant about Tim Corbin's strength of scheduling in preseason. And the answer, obviously, they didn't fully listen to what I was saying. It's like, I know why coaches do it, is how I prefaced it. But they said, you schedule so you know who your guys are, who your players are, and who your players aren't. And I said, you can learn that by also throwing in some cupcake weekend series and really testing out some young guys. That's my whole point, is Vanderbilt's really struggling because they refuse to adapt to the portal and they refuse to schedule shitty opponents to get their young players in and develop them. So you got to do one or the other. If you're not going to let your players develop in season, then you've got to hit the transfer portal. And they're not doing either. So it's Tim Corbin is stuck in 2019. And for some purposes, that's not the worst thing. But when Vanderbilt gets men on first and third or in second and third and no outs, Tim Corbin's first instinct is to sack bunt.
Just say up the Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt.
And it's fine. It won them national championships in 2014 and 2019. So God strike me down as I'm saying this. You can't win like that.
It's a free out.
You can't win like that.
It's a free out. Yeah.
How baseball has changed, how many more runs are being scored. Capitalizing by getting 2 runs in that inning is not good enough.
When you could get 3 or 4.
When you have potential to have a big inning, you've got to put up those 6-run, 8-run, 10-run innings. Vanderbilt doesn't do that because if they get put in that situation with no outs, they're going to give up outs.
Yeah.
And that's why they get stuck in those, they had a 3-run inning, 2 men on base now with 2 outs. And it's like oftentimes you look back at the beginning of the inning and they give up a sack bunt. And it's like, you'd have potentially 1 out.
With RJ Austin giving up a sack bunt. You're like, this is your best hitter.
So
why are you putting him in a position of bunt?
I've always been in this way. And there's some situation, like, people crap on me for this. There are certain situations where a bunt is absolutely the right move. Never ever in a no out situation without a pitcher that hits, like in the MLB. Or maybe a batter that's
they don't even do that anymore, yeah.
No, I know that. But I'm saying, like, unless it's like the MLB.
Yeah.
But unless it's a catcher you have that's hitting like 183 or somebody specifically, never bunt. There's not like, great job squeezing. No, never. Yeah. Never do it. The risk reward is not there.
Well, and it's not like you're in a double play situation where you have both men in scoring position. There's no double play situation. So what's a sack fly? Okay. At least you get to move both guys up, and at least he had a chance to put it out of the park.
Depending on how, and it's a lot of game flow. So if you have guys on first and third with 1 out, game flow for me. Very game flow oriented. If it feels like it's a, 1 run can be the difference type game, then yes, I'm bunting in that situation.
Yeah.
If it's one of those that you're playing a very highly talented offensive team, no, you don't bunt. You risk the double play and the potential of a big inning, and that's where Corbin is just very set, and he's bunting in that situation. With 1 out, men on first and third, he's bunting.
It's 1970s baseball.
And he's pushing in that run, and great, but a 6-run outing by UConn shouldn't feel like a death sentence.
I agree.
That shouldn't feel like your pitcher shit the bed because you gave up 6 runs. Like, that shouldn't feel that way. And it feels the same as it did last year. It feels like once a team gets a 3-4 run lead, it's over.
Yeah.
And Vanderbilt didn't lie down against UC Irvine earlier in the season, but for the most part, it's what you've seen. Once they're up 3 runs, it's over. And that's what happened this weekend. They lost 3-1. They lost 6-2. Those aren't pitching meltdowns. Those are bat meltdowns. So, I think I didn't watch this weekend, but I do not like the small ball. I don't think that's going to translate outside of certain situations. And I think we're past that era. It's like trying to run the triple option, like the true traditional.
The veer. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that had its time and place. Teams won championships running that, but it doesn't work anymore. And that's what I'm getting at with the small ball, is like, it's happened quicker because of NIL and the consolidation of power bats at high level programs, but that's over. That's done, man. Like, you're never winning a national championship with that style ever again. No coach anywhere.
I totally agree.
And so that's my big problem with that. I don't think basketball has any definitives like that I could state. Like, you can win with a great defensive team. You can win with a slowing it down team. You can win with a run and gun team. I think football is the best example because, like, there are offenses teams just can't run anymore.
Would you say basketball you couldn't win with a bad backcourt?
I don't think truly you could ever win with a bad backcourt.
Or a mediocre backcourt.
I still think you can.
Yeah.
I
Really? Okay.
I still think basketball, if you have dominant, because that's really saying like backcourt, that means like if you have a dude like Cooper Flagg, he's not part of your backcourt.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you can still win like
Okay.
without. So I don't think basketball has any set rules. I think it's so dependent on the players, like the systems. Like that's if you have Boogie Cousins and AD down low, yeah, you can win with a mediocre backcourt.
Yeah,
Even in modern basketball,
that is true. But
it's true. Like I don't. But in football, you can't win with the veer. Like at a high. Well, let me rephrase. You can't win at the national championship level playing that way. I think that gets confused because what win means with the Vanderbilt football program is different than what win means with baseball. Baseball's still going to win a lot of games playing that. They're never going to win at a national championship level playing like that. Vanderbilt can win football games if people for years clamored for the wing tee and triple option like Georgia Tech ran. Georgia Tech could win games with that. They could never compete for the ACC with that. That's my kind of my point. Is small ball can win if you're a bad baseball
situationally
with lesser talent.
Situationally,
if you have lesser talent with a baseball program, you can win more games than you otherwise should playing small ball. If you're Vanderbilt, you're Alabama, motherfucker. Like, you are bringing in the best players in the country. You shouldn't be playing small ball.
I agree.
That's my point. With baseball's different than everything, and a lot of the things I'm seeing out of Corbin. I don't like criticizing him, but man, it's a lot of crotchety old man things that's just being refusing, and just people are like, man, it's not working. He knows it's not working, and he's like, well, this is how I've always done it, and this is how I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just the refusal to change, and at some point, I'm never, ever, like I stated last episode, calling for Tim Corbin's job. I will never do it. I won't do it. He deserves to go out on his own, unless he stays for like 3 years and they end up sucking. But man, dude, you've got to make some adjustments or call it a career. Yeah. Like, don't soil your legacy with Vanderbilt fans by doing this, by refusing to adapt. It's the reason Saban retired, man.
Don't go out like Jim Boeheim.
Nick Saban saw the writing on the wall, said, I don't want to change like this, and retired a few years earlier than I think he otherwise would have. And I think that's what Tim Corbin needs to do.
I agree.
He was dominant in his era of what athletics were, and everything has been done a 180 now. Every strategy you had before, how you played, how you recruited, how you discussed things with parents, it's all different now. And Corbin has just been left behind in this modern era right now. And I'm not saying he can't catch back up, but right now he's not showing me anything. He's doing anything to change.
Yeah.
So that's it. He's capable. He's a smart man. He's one of the greatest baseball coaches of all time at the college level. He can change. Is he willing to change? That's the question.
That's the goal. That's the big question.
He knows what the problems are. He knows what they need to do. Is he willing to do it?
Yeah.
And right now, I don't think he is.
That's been my quip with him this entire time.
Yep. So that's all we really have for baseball here. Anything else you wanted to add on about baseball or basketball before we close it out, and then I can get to editing this before a damn 9 p.m. tip-off tonight against Arkansas? 9 p.m.?
9 p.m.
Good God.
Lordy. That's all I got.
Well, if that's the case, then everybody tune in tonight at 9 p.m. for Vanderbilt, Arkansas, even though you won't hear this until it's already happened.
We hope you tuned in last night.
Yeah, we hope you tuned in last night, and hopefully the outcome was better than I predicted. But for myself, Will Byrum, and my co-host, Trevor Hulan, this has been episode 305 of The Door Report, powered by 615 Collect.
Old school